Hi there, welcome to another edition of the Israel-Palestine Report. Coming to you quickly after the one I made yesterday because there's been some major developments on the hostage ceasefire deal front. So there's been a lot of progress, and we're the closest that we've been to a deal in over a year. So let's get right down to all the details of what's going on. So the a ceasefire talk always has the most chance of succeeding when pressure is coming onto Netanyahu from the highest source, and that highest source, of course, is Trump. And therefore, the timing, which is of course intentional, of Netanyahu's visit to Washington, D.C., is proving absolutely crucial here. So Netanyahu is currently in DC, and they met twice within 24 hours in the White House. The focus was almost exclusively Gaza. When Netanyahu tried to change the subject, according to reports, Trump put it back. And Trump often emphasized the urgency of a Gaza ceasefire. He called Gaza a tragedy and said, we have to solve this. Netanyahu wants to solve it. I want to solve it. And I think the other side wants to solve it too. Because of the seriousness of the meetings, they were closed to press, which is a little bit unusual for Trump, who likes to make a show of these things. We all remember that meeting with Zelensky, for example. But it wasn't just Netanyahu. A Qatari delegation also arrived in DC to coordinate the ceasefire. The details have been known for a while, the main outline. It's going to be a 60-day ceasefire, phased release of hostages, half of the 20 confirmed alive in two stages, 8 on day 1, 2 on day 50. Return of 18 deceased hostages in 3 phases. Palestinian prisoner releases and increased humanitarian aid. The families of the hostage have urged Trump to, quote, make history by securing release and ending the war. A family representative said, quote, the commitment of the administration remains very high. That's encouraging. But we haven't seen that from the Israeli side. It's clear that without ending the war, they can't be freed. Now, according to the latest reports, everything has been settled, and we'll talk about what that means, aside from one issue, and that issue is the Morag Corridor, or sometimes known affectionately or unaffectionately as the Philadelphia 2, built as a backup behind Rafah as another line of Israeli operation, defense, whatever you want to call it. Um, and there's other obstacles as well, such as the Israeli desire to create a concentration camp in southern Gaza in the Rafah area. Israeli officials have been saying repeatedly that they think that by week's end, there's likely going to be a ceasefire agreement, and they haven't been this optimistic in a very long time. Still, talks remain sensitive and complex. So, what are the core issues at hand? What disputes were there and what disputes remain? So, like we said, the Morag Corridor is the main issue right now. Um, it's funny because that was only built recently, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Hamas have demanded, in exchange for a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, so an end to the war with guarantees from Trump, which they seem to have received, although they haven't received guarantees from Israel. Full Israeli withdrawal, and that's where the Morag element is a real snag. Morag is in the middle of Gaza. It's in the south, but north of Rafah. And if Israel remains there, you can't say there's a full Israeli withdrawal, as well as prisoner releases and the full restoration of aid, including dismantling the GHF and replacing it with the UN or other international organizations. Um, Israel is demanding the opposite from the guarantees that Hamas wants. They want guarantees to resume fighting if Hamas violates agreements, and to seek Trump's public backing for removing Hamas from power, disarming it, and exiling its leaders. Hard to see how all these demands go together, but one of the things the U.S. has done in the past is provide letters of guarantee to the different sides that are not part of the agreement, that are external, like the ones that the U.S. provided to Israel in Sinai 2, including a guarantee not to talk to the PLO and so on and so forth. Those are the kind of things that the U.S. has used. in the past. It looks like they're going to be using that again. They'll probably give different guarantees to the different sides, even guarantees that might, on the face of it or in reality, contradict. Witkoff talked about how far they'd come on these major disputed issues, and this is where a lot of the optimism is coming from. He said, quote, "We had four disputed issues, and now only one remains. We hope to have an agreement by the end of this week that will bring a 60-day ceasefire." So what were the things that were resolved? One of them includes humanitarian aid delivery. That will now be delivered via neutral international groups. What international groups considered neutral by the two sides? Um, but that's how it will happen. The Israeli military deployment during the ceasefire seems to have been resolved. In what stages Israel will withdraw everywhere from, except from the Morag line. And then also the hostage lists and the pace at which they will be released and what prisoners will be released in exchange. There is a remaining dispute aside from Morag, which is Israel's full commitment to halt hostilities after 60 days. Hamas wants U.S. guarantees that no fighting will resume. Witkoff said Trump is working seriously to prevent the war's renewal, but has not issued an official commitment. But on PBS NewsHour, they said that that guarantee had been provided to Hamas, or the guarantee that a guarantee will be given has been provided to Hamas. I don't think there would be any talk about an agreement being reached unless that problem had been resolved, but we'll see. Hamas refuses to provide hostage names until IDF deployment and withdrawal maps for the ceasefire are agreed. And a lot of these breakthroughs were achieved once it was agreed to start having talks in Washington, D.C. directly between Netanyahu and Trump, because the talks in Doha were going very slowly. So, what is this Morag Corridor that Israel is now insisting on? The Morag Corridor is an Israeli security zone between Han Yunis and Rafah. It stretches all the way from the Israeli border into the Mediterranean. It's a brand new thing, really, from the perspective of this war. It was established on April 2nd, 2025. So we're talking about just 3 months ago. And it was a third corridor joining Philadelphia, which is the border with Egypt, and Netzarim, which is further to the north. Morag, by the way, was an Israeli settlement there that was evacuated in 2005. Netanyahu calls Morag, quote, the second Philadelphia, an additional Philadelphia corridor. And it's much wider than you might think. It controls about 20% of Gaza because of its thickness, and it's been one of the major centers from which Israel launches its attacks into other parts of the Gaza Strip. Its creation involved evacuating a lot of the suburbs of Rafah and some areas of Rafah proper and building military infrastructure there instead. All of Rafah, by the way, has been destroyed. So not just the parts that were used for this, but part of it was destroyed in order to create this. Defense Minister Israel Katz said that the only way to end the war is for the residents of Gaza to expel Hamas and return all the hostages. Um, this corridor is part of the plan to complete an ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And below it, as we talked about in the last episode, there's a plan to turn Rafah into a concentration camp in which the entire population of Gaza will be centered, and having, of course, a military line behind it is very helpful for that kind of plan to stop anyone from coming up um, to the north and stop anyone from the north from coming down to the south. The corridor enables, according to Eitan Dangot, formerly of Kogat, close control by IDF forces, preventing movement between areas and allowing full control of traffic and humanitarian aid. So one of the major things that this would be an aid of, as I said, is that concentration camp in Rafah. And yesterday, Israel Katz announced it. Today, it appeared in the Israeli press that Netanyahu supports the creation of this city. I would assume that Netanyahu either has Trump on board or is desperately trying to get Trump on board. An Israeli source said the plan is to move all of Gaza's civilians south to a large tent city in Rafah with plenty of food and hospitals. As the prime minister says, they can have Ben and Jerry's, end quote. I suppose that's some kind of joke from Netanyahu's perspective. The goal there, the stated one, is to separate civilians from Hamas militants. So anyone who goes in there would be checked. How you would check that someone's not Hamas, I don't know. Probably this would involve biometrics, certainly not a foolproof method. Israel is probably going to manage the outside security of the camp, but it expects local actors or international bodies like the GHF, which may no longer handle aid, so this would be its new job, to handle daily operations. Netanyahu reportedly said, quote, in the short term, we shouldn't fear doing the work ourselves. If we don't, no one will volunteer, and Hamas will continue to control things, end quote. So Israel will have a certain role in doing that. The idea would be not to give aid anywhere else, and then Palestinians would be forced to move south if they want to eat. Then they would undergo checks, and then anyone who was out of that area would be assumed to be Hamas, and then it would be easy for Israel to kill them without any concern over whether they're civilians or not. Not that that's much of a concern right now. And the people inside that would be prepared for um, an evacuation to another country once that country is found. The Mossad, the CIA have been negotiating with different countries to find somewhere for them to go. Katz emphasized the IDF will secure the area from a distance and will not manage the camps or distribute food. At the first stage, it will include 600,000 people and eventually the entire population. So far, this plan has been rejected along with any kind of population transfer by the most important stakeholders, including Egypt and Qatar. According to the report in Haaretz today about what happened with the Morag line, the United States has also lost interest in this plan and is only half-heartedly supporting it. It's Israel that's really spurring this ahead. Egypt has said that this plan is, quote, a direct threat to the northern border where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians might be pushed. So, what do we have going on? Israel has found a new excuse to hold up talks, the Morag line. The, but it does have an operational requirement. The operational requirement isn't military. It has to do with the plan to concentrate the entire population into Rafah and deport them. So that gives us a kind of clue into as to what Israel's trying to do. It's trying to leave Hamas in power with a very small area that they control. Most of Gaza would be a kind of a wilderness that Israel would be able to operate in at will. And to the south of Rafah, they would concentrate the population and begin a plan of voluntary relocation of the population once they have a target country. So Israel wants a ceasefire, but isn't abandoning the ethnic cleansing element. The Morag line, and the reason Israel's insisting on it, is because it's an essential part of that plan. Okay, thanks for watching. If you like what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon at Shael Media, my Substack, The Grand Scheme, and listening to the History of the Land of Israel podcast. I'll be here again very soon, the next time something interesting happens.